So this video is going to have a bit of a long intro, but please bear with me. By the end of it, you will know which 3 icons on your scout report actually impact a player's value in the game and are therefore reflections on their most important hidden attributes. Let's go. Now, many other FM content creators have tried and come very close to uncovering the formula for current ability in Football Manager, and it's a bit of a weird one because there's no real in-game benefit to doing that. Or is there? Well, we actually think there is, because in attempting dozens of approaches in replicating current ability, we've happened upon a few surprising dependencies on some of the game's hidden attributes. That's right, we've been spending some more quality time with Microsoft Excel, and after we pulled together the attributes for all players, which helped us fuel the statistics shared in this video, which we will link at the end, we've actually since taken to try to crack the code and see exactly how current ability score is calculated in FM24. Well, we're pleased to say that for centre-backs at least, we think we've kind of nailed it, as we got a less than 1% inaccuracy average and this likeness when we compared our best prediction model against the game's actual current ability scores for central defenders. Now, as we've mentioned, many others have attempted this very feat in the past. It's not a new thing to try and unscramble the game engine in FM, which is perhaps one of the most black box and complex games around, but what we here at FM Immortal have worked out is that there are 2 component calculations in which current ability is formulated. Before we move on though, a shout out to one of our favourite FM channels who sadly no longer put out content but are still absolutely worth a visit, particularly if this current ability calculation is a nut that you are also trying to crack. That is Evidence-Based Football Manager. We'll link a video in the description of a video that they put out around a year ago on the same topic, within which is cited a fantastic article on FM Scout by a chap named CAE, which gives you everything you need to know, a rundown of current ability in the game. Now, the common theme here with this video, Evidence-Based Football Manager's video, and the article that we've just mentioned, is that no attempt has actually uncovered the whole truth. Much like us, they get very close, but not quite on the nose with their efforts to replicate the calculation. Okay then, so for those in-game editor connoisseurs out there, you'll already know that these hidden attribute scores are otherwise inaccessible without buying this add-on, but I promise that the outcome of this video will feature some tangible tips for every FM player, because your scouting reports are actually the place to go for the resulting advice on these hidden attributes. So in this video, we're first going to prove how we can predict the current ability of centre-backs to a certain degree, and then talk about those aforementioned component calculations. We'll then do a quick recap on what the hidden attributes are and what they influence within the match engine, before then summarising how they are represented in the scout reports and what you should therefore pay attention to before signing a centre-back. So each of those sections is timestamped, feel free to skip on to whichever bit you're most interested in, otherwise let's get into it. Okay, so we're back in Microsoft Excel, but don't worry, I'm not going to talk through every trial and error encountered through our current ability experiment. We're instead going to start by trying to explain the methodology we actually honed in on in less than 2 minutes. So as you can see, we've tried a fair few techniques here to get the best likeness across 10 centre-backs of varying quality, and whilst at the start I was hell-bent on figuring out each player's exact current ability, it became clear after a while that there were 2 component calculations to figure out rather than 1, and so I rested on having an acceptable likeness across all 10 players instead. The difference between my prediction then and the game's actual current ability rating came out at 0.7%, and whilst the magnitudes are all over the shop, the spread between the players was actually very close to the truth, and that is the most important thing: consistency relevant to the other players' scores. The formula I ended up deeming best then took an arbitrary integer, in this case 285, and then took the number of high and very high importance attributes. Those are the ones that the game's colours in for you when looking at the player's profile with a particular position highlighted, by the way. Then the formula inverts the difference between the player's scores in those attributes against the backdrop of the maximum 20. For centre-backs then, there are 23 important attributes, including those 3 hidden ones that we'll get onto soon. So for one isolated example, if, let's say, Tal Ben Haim had 15 in every attribute, the calculation would essentially be 285 minus 23 times 5, because the difference between 20 and 15 is 5, and there are 23 attributes in focus here. That would give him a current ability rating of 170, which is probably a bit high, especially for Tal Ben Haim, but that's why the first component, that arbitrary integer, will require some more deep diving. Some important caveats here then. Whilst the average across the job lot of centre-backs here deviates by just 0.7%, the actual variance to the actual scores is 4.4 attribute points. So, like my predecessors, I've not got this bang on. Sports Interactive, your secrets are still safe for now. The only other thing I want to mention though, many others who've attempted this feat have weighted attributes, either by attribute type for position or based on the high or very high importance per position. Now we had some success with this initially, but ultimately moved away from this. It's not to say it's incorrect or it wouldn't be part of the eventual formula, but it didn't quite work as well as the one we honed in on. But here's where it gets super interesting and why we're making another fucking spreadsheet video. If we look at the hidden attributes here that I've put a VH against, and we begin to replace those with another tag like L, or add others in by changing their tag to very high as well, then the deviation in the resulting likeness is ridiculously high. By this conclusion, I believe that these 3 hidden attributes that impact a defender's current ability score are important matches, pressure, and consistency. Right then, hidden attributes 101, anyone? Now FM Blog has all of this in spades if you want to pick apart the hidden attributes in more detail, but in short there are 12 attributes again, all scored out of 20, that the game uses in various match and game engine calculations but that you cannot see. And those are adaptability, which tells you how likely a player is to hit the ground running when signing from overseas or into a new league or tactical setup. Ambition, which dictates the player's likelihood to want to play on a bigger stage or at least for a bigger team. Important matches, one of the current ability dependencies this, in our humble opinion that is, will score how well a player is likely to play in a semi-final or cup final match, a title decider or a close fought rivalry game. Next up, loyalty is perhaps the most underrated hidden attribute actually. It eventuates in the player's likelihood to stick with the club that they are at, despite interest coming in from elsewhere. Pressure, next, is another of those current ability dependencies, and it is a psychological attribute that we think influences the likes of composure and decisions when the heat is really on. Professionalism then is all about conduct, and a low score here will see your players skipping training in favour of going to that nightclub, but those troublemakers are few and far between in FM. Sportsmanship then, we think, is the hidden attribute that culminates in the competitive streak icon on your scouting reports. These will be the shithouses on the pitch if there's a low sportsmanship rating. Next is temperament then, and that will measure a player's reactive calmness while involved with specific match situations. So things like tackles and fouls, as well as bookings and decisions by the referee, partner a low temperament score with low sportsmanship score and high aggression, and you've essentially got yourself a rabid XL bully that's just had its dick stung by a hornet. Versatility is self-explanatory. The higher the versatility score, the better the player will perform in multiple positions. Consistency then, that's the last of the 3 current ability dependencies we've identified. This will measure not necessarily how well a player will play week in, week out, but rather if they'll put in the same levels game by game, which, if they have a decent set of attributes behind them, will mean that you've got a reliable reflection of current ability, all but guaranteed. Controversy then is, according to FM Blog at least, the measure of exactly how outspoken a player is going to be with the press, but I dare say that there's more under the bonnet here and more on the pitch antics relating to this one too than perhaps we know about. And last but not least, injury proneness, another self-explanatory one really, the bane of all our existence and the reason that David Beckham got back into the England squad over Darren Anderton after that fateful night in 1998. By now, I don't think that we need to tell you that this is the biggest red flag when buying any player in FM24. Injuries are rife and you'll do well to avoid signing anyone with glass ankles. So there we have it then, the 3 things to look out for on your scout reports to make sure you've got a top quality centre back are important matches where thrives is better than relishes and relishes is better than enjoys. Then next is pressure, which manifests with this icon and has a different strapline depending on the position in focus. For a defender it'll read something like hard to get past, and for an attacker it'll usually talk to dominance in the air. And finally, consistency, which is plain and simply the best hidden attribute to have a high score in. When you've got the other attributes to back it up, this icon is the one you must look out for. So when it comes to centre backs at least, partner those 3 icons we've just talked about with these top 6 attributes and the core attributes that we mention in this video, and you're on for a very solid defensive performer. The one thing that we haven't mentioned throughout this video though is that current ability is doubtless the way that the FM AI clubs evaluate players. Therefore, price tags and bid values for certain players and in certain circumstances will all be based on that one number in the game. So knowing what's contributing to that number will hopefully help you differentiate between 2 players of similar stature. If you remember anything from this video, compare only those coloured in attributes first, then look for important matches, consistency and a replication of pressure in the scout report, and hopefully that will steer you towards the better player. Now, as you may have guessed, this exercise took some time. A fair amount of trial and error was involved alongside a lot of research. And again, this isn't an exact scientific replication of the game engine, but if you did find this video helpful in any way, please show us some love. And if you want to see us put our 2-factor current ability calculation to the test for other roles in the game, let us know which down in the comments. That's going to do it for today's video though, folks. Much more where this came from on its way, and amazingly we've now got over 75 videos live on the channel, so be sure to check out more of FM Immortal in the build up to FM 25's release, and until next time my friends, adios.